some of you are parents yourself. And but the rest of you, I guess, why are you here?
Well, organizer.
Who's Shalomo?
Well, Shallow works with me. He's a developer and also just, I think, curious soul. That's probably the best way to describe him.
Okay. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about like what we're gonna cover today. So there's this link that you can click on if you would like to. It's basically a form that you can fill up. So you can think about anyone of your choice. And you're just gonna answer questions about them in your own time if you're interested. And what it will basically allow you to do is see whether or not the person might have addiction issues. And it's not a diagnostic test by any means. It's just meant to be an indicator. So you can fill this up in your own time if you're interested. And I think Avi has put the link in the chat. Right, Avi?
Yep, just did.
Okay. So what we're going to cover tonight is what are the costs and benefits of social media and online gaming, why they're so addictive, when the behaviors become an issue, and the core reasons behind these risky and addictive behaviors. So the first part is the benefits and costs of social media and online gaming. So all of you obviously use a form of social media, right? Why do you use it?
Because I'm stuck at home all day and that's the only way I can talk to my friends.
Any other reasons?
For entertainment? For promotional basis.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, it might be to spread fake news.
Yeah. Hi, Nikki. Hi, we're just talking about why we use social media. So why didn't you use social media?
Well, she's just muted herself. We'll let her figure it out bit by bit.
Yes, that's okay. Okay, so basically, I think some of you have said, like, you use it to talk to your friends, and yeah, a lot of people use it for socializing and communicating, but we also use it for information, right? Sometimes it's disinformation, like Joe said, like fake news, but it's also information, and sometimes people learn technical skills on it, and it's a learning opportunity. And actually what the research shows is that when you're on social media, it can be a good avenue for raising your self-esteem and building social capital because, like, it allows you to express yourself in ways that can feel safer, especially for those who are quite shy in real life. Social media can be a way that they can be, more expressive with their thoughts, and they can say what they need to say, and it gives them a way to explore their identity as well. And then because there's so many groups, like there's like Facebook groups and stuff like that, where you can meet like-minded people, right? It also provides you like a sense of support, like social support, and you can be like, you can disclose things about yourself on the internet that you might not disclose otherwise. So like, here are some of the benefits. Does anyone else have anything to add in terms of the benefits of social media? No? Okay. So now, let's talk about the costs of social media. So, for you, what do you think might be some of the reasons why social media might not be so good?
One of the well-known reasons could be mental health.
Mm-hmm. And when you say mental health, what do you really mean, Joe?
It means like social media is known for being bad for your mental health in ways like, for example, it makes other people's lives look so much better, so you feel worse about yours. That's just one example.
Exactly.
I find it very time consuming. Almost you can scroll away your day.
Yeah. So it's like hooks you in, right? And then it's like you don't do anything else.
Yeah. On top of that, also it creates a kind of need for social media. So you're searching for maybe it's responses or likes or just simply acknowledgement on social media that might not exist at that time, and that can be quite detrimental, especially in kids when they're growing up, because they think that if they're not getting approval there, am I worthwhile, and so on. And that kind of links to what you sort of talk about mental health. It was a huge topic where we talk about mental health as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And also the fact that you sometimes don't know who is behind the account. You don't know who you're talking to and what they want from you, or like, because you only have a picture that could be built, and even now with videos that can be updated and all that, you actually have no certainty of who you're interacting with.
Yeah. And that can be very dangerous for kids who can't tell the difference, right? Like, we actually had a student who was interacting with a girl in Africa, and he was really happy because he was on the autism spectrum and he had no other kind of love interest. He was a teenager, he was 15, and the girl wanted to marry him, and he basically was flattered and delighted, and he wanted to marry her because for the first time ever, someone desired him, right? So, Louise, you're right, and we were so concerned because we said, like, you don't even know if this person is a real person. And he was determined and adamant that she was real and that she loved him. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything else to add about the costs of social media? Okay. So some of the things you guys already mentioned, but then there's also this aspect of cyberbullying that we notice it has like really ramped up, right? Like bullying, so the main difference between cyberbullying and like face-to-face bullying is that actually cyberbullying is a lot easier. Like, we have a lot of kids who are able to say all kinds of things behind a screen that they would not say to a person like face-to-face. And also, like, because you're always online, cyberbullying can take place anytime. Like, to be bullied, you kind of need to be out of your house, in school, and face-to-face with another human being. But to be cyberbullied, you can be in your own room and still be bullied, right? So it like follows you everywhere. And that is one of the most detrimental things I think about social media. And of course, cyberbullying then leads to depression, anxiety, like isolation, and then and in worst case scenarios, suicide. It also can lead to like sexting. It happens obviously more with girls, but it happens a lot also with guys, and then you get this objectified self-concept where you feel like you have to live up to all these, I don't know, Instagram influencers to be popular, to get any sense of worth. So that also can lead to all kinds of mental health issues, which Joel already mentioned. And then there's obviously all this exposure to inappropriate content and also disinformation. So here it's not an exhaustive list, obviously, but we are all very aware, right, that there are benefits to social media, but definitely there are costs to it too. So now let's talk about gaming. Do you guys game? Because I don't actually game.
Not anymore, but I used to play once in a while.
Okay, so why did you game, Mavi?
It was with my friends, actually. That was the main reason. I started with my friends, and it was a fun challenge to play with them. And you just after football, you go back and what do? Play League of Legends till 4 a.m. This was really.
Anyone else here games and
Yeah. Hi Tracy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Nikki.
Okay, so I don't really game, but my son, ever since the online classes started, that's all that he's been wanting to do. And because there's the need to sit in front of the computer all day, it's not helped with that. And his whole gaming world has become more tangible to him than like doing other activities or like socializing or being with family. And he always tells me that he prefers making friends online and in his gaming community and playing there, because then he doesn't have to deal with actual confrontation and the actual conflict that comes from actual socializing face to face and playing. So it's just made things very convenient, but I feel like it's given him a false sense of what friendship and socializing is. Then again, I don't know whether this is going to be the way to socialize and to make friends of the future, you know what I mean? So I don't know what to make of it really.
Yeah. And we'll cover some of it after. But yes, I mean, it really does give kids a sense of belonging and the sense of community and the sense that they have shared interests, right? So these are some of the like benefits, right? They like actually get social connection from it. And if also all your friends game and you don't, then when they meet and that's all they're talking about, then you're gonna feel left out, right? There's someone here that has like a lot of background noise going around.
I think it's Nikki. Can you just mute your microphone?
My microphone?
Yeah, there's a bit of background. Alright, yeah, it's better.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yes, we're good. Yes, I mean like a lot of it has to do with social connection, but also like they've actually shown that people who play a lot of games tend to have like very good problem solving and analytical skills. They've got very good visual attention. They've got very good visual search, which means that if you are supposed to find an object in like a sea of things, they're actually quite fast at finding those things, because I think that's one of those things that online gaming can hone, right? And it also obviously raises their self-esteem, because if the way games are designed is that when you can level up quite easily, that's a boost to your self-esteem. And then you can tell your friends like, oh, I'm on level this already, like what level are you at, that kind of stuff. And it actually is shown to be quite a good stress reducer. I actually know quite a lot of parents who play games at night. I have a friend who wakes up at 5:30 in the morning to game before his kids wake up, because he said that it's like a stress reducer for him. So it really depends on the person. But I think you guys also mentioned a lot, I mean, like Nikki brought up the cost of gaming, right? And some of the costs of gaming are obviously like opportunity costs, because if you're playing online games a lot, that means that you're not really doing anything else. Because if you spend a lot of time on it, then you end up not doing that. And then there's this disruption in sleep cycles, right? Because if you are on your screen throughout the day, what actually happens is that the amount of blue light you are exposed to actually causes you to not be able to sleep properly, and it leads to a disruption in sleep cycles. And when that happens, it will lead to all these other snowballing effects, such as depression, social anxiety, and then you have things like dopamine addiction, because what games do is that they make you have these they've shown through research and brain scans that it actually causes your brain to release dopamine in the same way that other drugs do, whether it's alcohol or cocaine or whatever. So you do get the same kick from gaming as you do with these drugs. So you just have to be really careful as a parent or educator when your kids are doing these things, because there are good sides to things like these, but then there's also a dark side to it. Yeah. And you can have a reduction in social connections outside gaming, like Nikki said. Her son doesn't want to spend time with family, right? Because he doesn't see it as engaging maybe or as important. So if they start to lose interest in their actual real world, then that can be a real problem. And then if you're gaming and not outside playing, which children really do need to do, we need the physical exercise. We were never built to sit in front of a screen and on our asses the whole day. Then your physical health will definitely deteriorate as well. And then your concentration levels will go down. How many kids do we know who can't focus because they've spent so much time gaming? It really takes a toll on your ability to concentrate. And then your mental health and motivation all it all once it becomes a problem, you realize that actually all these things will start to happen together, and that's, I guess, the danger of it. So why are they so addictive? I realize that I'm talking to the programmers here, and you guys are the ones who are there to design things so that they are very addictive and desirable to the consumers and the users. So tell us, why are they so addictive?
Well, I think one point to that is literally a lot of the mechanisms put in place. I think you have mentioned them aptly. Is the level up concept, that sort of gratification at sort of randomized intervals or at the right time. It's sort of structured in a way to continuously hit you with dopamine, very, very much when you need it the most. And that's really the entire process, is to trigger as many good dopamine hits throughout your day. Whether it's if it's you're playing a game for an hour, they will find ways to hit you in the right time, so that it means at the end of that hour you feel like you want to carry on feeling that same satisfaction. And it sort of builds this continuous, like, oh, okay, I'm on this high. And it sort of comes from this level of stimulation that's very difficult to compete with, I think, in just real life. And maybe we can talk a bit more about that, because I think there's a whole topic behind hyperstimulation and this new generation of children, and I think adults as well.
Yeah, I mean, what it really does is that, it activates these reward centers, right? That are the same reward centers that we get when we, have anything that's extremely pleasurable, like whether it's, cocaine or whether it's coffee or whatever it is, but it does activate those things. And if you think about it, you would not ever give your child like alcohol or drugs, but at the same time, we allow a lot of our kids to game, right? And that's okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't allow your kids to game at all, but then they do need to have boundaries, because once it gets out of hand, it will lead to addiction. And they are programmed to be addictive. Their games are always meant to just designed to kind of be just challenging enough so that you feel like you have to work for it, but not so challenging that you give up. And there's always this concept of endless amount of lives, right? So okay, if you lost this round, you can try again, and when you try again, then you succeed. And oh, I tried again, I succeeded, so now I'm gonna keep trying, because obviously that gives me the sense that I'm achieving something. So they are programmed to be addictive in that sense. And for social media, it's also like that. So one of the things that I didn't know, that I found out when I was researching this topic, is that Instagram actually holds your likes sometimes. So if you post something and someone has liked it, they actually don't show you that someone has liked it. They kind of hold these likes so that they later release it all at a go to give you this burst of wow, I got 200 likes or whatever it is, right? So they've known, through research, that this is much more, it causes more addiction. So that's actually how they program the algorithms to work. I don't know, is it ethical, is it not? I don't know, right? But that's just how it is. Before I go on, does anyone else have any other thing to add about why they're so addicted?
So from what I've heard, the way things like, for example, Netflix program algorithms. So apparently there were experiments done on rats in which they have a choice between two buttons. One button, every time they press it, food comes out. The other button, there's a chance of either food coming out or not coming out. So those were the two buttons, and what they found was the button where there was only a 50-50 chance of food coming out was more addictive than the button where you have a 100% chance of food coming out. So that's how Netflix tuned your recommendations. They show you a few shows that they know you might want to watch in a pool of a bunch of shows that they know you don't want to watch. So that's how I heard Netflix programs their algorithms.
That's very interesting, Joe.
Thank you.
Anyone else has anything else to add?
I think just adding on, you mentioned earlier about an ethical standpoint. Sorry. You mentioned earlier about an ethical standpoint. I think a lot of these social media companies, gaming companies, there is no rules in place, or there is no control or governance in place on how you design games and the impact it has on the users of those games. They're free to put in any or choose any way that they want to engage their audience, and with that complete autonomy, they're able to take advantage of a lot of things, such as what we've seen in gambling, what we've seen in drugs as well, how people get addicted, to try and ensure that they come back and play those games. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these things, when we look at social media, is free, but they get money from people using their platforms. And it goes down to how are they going to sustain themselves, how are they going to make sure that they can pay for all the things that they're doing. We take it even further, going back to the business side, the shareholders and making wealth for the shareholders, going back to the capitalist point of view as well. And if we don't get those on it, as a community, we don't decide that, okay, yes, they're important, and there are benefits to all of these things, but if we don't govern and we don't put control in place, it will get out of hand. Because you can see elements of gambling coming into a lot of games. And like Joe said about the way our psychology works, we are more interested in an opportunity to get something rather than getting something, because we feel that sense of achievement. And they're tying that into games. And that's exactly the same thing as why gambling is so addictive as well. And they're following that psychology. They're using psychology against kids or against us as adults as well. Because there's not anybody who can fall prey to addiction. Anybody can fall prey. It's just kids are a lot more vulnerable, and they're taking advantage of that. But yeah, it's a key point that potentially something to look at and further discuss later on as well.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, gaming is a multi-billion dollar industry, right? And like that's what they're competing for. They're competing for attention, and in the attention economy, the platform that keeps your attention for the longest amount of time is the platform that is most successful. So they have a huge incentive to make it addictive, because that's how they make money. They want you to stay on that platform. And I mean, you guys are right about like dopamine dopamine is not generated by just, if you expect something to happen and it happens, that's actually not what generates dopamine, right? It's actually the unpredictability of something. So it's actually the thrill of the chase. It's like, going out to a bar and thinking like, okay, I want to hook up with someone tonight, right? It's not the hookup itself that is the thing that generates the dopamine. It's actually the opportunity of whether or not you're going to get it, right? And that's the thing that's super exciting. So that's actually programmed into games. Like if you think about like skins and stuff like that, I don't know, my kids are obsessed with skins. Like I can't really understand it, because for me, like, why would you care about a skin? Because it's just like an avatar. It doesn't give you special powers or whatever. But they actually play games for much longer because they want to get loot boxes that then give them these other skins that might be quite rare. And it's really just for bragging rights, because it doesn't give you any superpowers. But it works. It works very, very well. And my kids game a lot.
Yeah.
So,
What do skins do? Are they like an avatar?
yeah. So when, like, you can even see your skin, actually, from what I understand. You can't see your own skin, but you know that when people see you, they see this cool skin, like, so it might be like an awesome hat, or it might be like this coat that's very rare or whatever it is. But it doesn't give you any superpowers. It doesn't make you more powerful. It literally just shows people that you look good.
Yeah, just to
It's
add,
like a trophy at the end of the day.
add for
Yes.
everybody. I put it in the chat before, but again, you can look whenever you want to raise your hands to talk. Even when Tracy's saying somebody wants to talk and someone else is already talking, just put your hand up. I think the buttons you press 6 on your actual keyboard. It will trigger your hand to be raised, and then I'll see it, and then I can use that to call upon you. So it's easier for me to manage. Otherwise, just carry on, and we'll go on. Kieran.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the things. Yeah. Karen, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna follow up on that and play a little bit of a devil's advocate and maybe not put all of the blame on the programmers in the sense that, I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, the goal is to try and get as much of your reward, whatever your sort of end goal is for a company. You want to get more attention, or they want to get more people on the platform, whatever that is, right? They're trying to figure out what works to get that sort of result. And I don't think it's, at least maybe, I want to live in this world where programmers aren't evil, they aren't actively going out of their way and saying, how can I corrupt these people's lives by giving them something that's akin to nicotine to kids or cocaine to kids? And it's more of, at least I'd like to believe, they've tried so many different things, and the ones that work are these ones that tap into the biological systems of us, tap into that dopamine system, that reward system. And there's a lot of biology behind it, and I don't think, at least as far as we know, any other sort of way to approach this reward of getting people on their platform. There's no other way to do it other than a sort of, here's a reward, let me get you addicted, let me give you all these extra benefits, let me find the best way to do it to compete with the next person. We live in this capitalistic world, and potentially it's the motives behind the gamers, behind the why they want people to play the game. It's at the end of the day, right? I mean, there's so many teachers here as well. If your motives are more educationally directed, you get completely different games potentially, right? You don't get those games that try and trigger this, or maybe they do, but they achieve different results at the end of the day. They teach somebody by triggering these reward functions, these reward systems in the brain. And just maybe I wanted to just put that point out there as a little relief on the guilt of programmers.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, and he brings up that point. If you look at Duolingo, they basically gamified the whole language learning process, and millions, hundreds of millions of people are learning languages because of it. So there's a huge benefit to that. One other thing that maybe also sort of maybe relieves some of the guilt potentially, or the burden on programmers, is when you use a lot of these algorithms to make decisions on how to give people the right notification, the right trigger. A lot of that is based on machine learning, and some of that programmers aren't exactly fully aware of what or how it makes the decision. It knows the final outcome, but the process is very much, we talked about this before, it's sort of a black box to the programmer even. So that it does in the end lead people or act in this certain way, but nobody really decided for that to happen or understand why it happens that way. It's just that, okay, this is what our aim was. We want to get more attention. How we achieve it is completely, it's there's no transparency almost in a lot of these algorithms. So yeah, Tracy.
No, because isn't that the secret weapon? Why would you give transparency? Because you do want to, that's your IP, right?
Yeah, but it's actually a funny thing about it is it's sometimes we talk about it like they're holding it back because they want to, and they're like, we don't want to share how we're creating addicts, but in a lot of cases they actually don't know. They really don't understand how these algorithms work. It's a very fascinating point. Maybe we'll talk a bit more about it later, about how these programs work. It's a bit more off tangent, but I think it'd be an interesting point to sort of bring into how it affects people.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're just going to talk about when these behaviors become an issue, because I think we all agree that some amount of social media and some amount of gaming in your life is fine. It's just that when does it become overboard, right? So the link that Avi has put into the chat, you can take it in your own time. But basically, according to this website that's called gamequickers.com, it's quite a good resource if your child, if you do feel that your child is potentially addicted to gaming. It does have quite a lot of resources on how you can work on it. But basically you think about your child or the person that you're thinking about, and if they score more than 5, it indicates a potential problem. So I just want to remind everyone that this is non-diagnostic, okay? It's just an indicator. So if they score more than 5, then maybe you should start to worry or take some steps to try and help them with their dependence on gaming or social media. So now, this is a WHO definition as to when it becomes a problem. And it really just means, I mean, it's a very long definition, but it really just means that if you're going to use gaming at the cost of everything else, and you've lost interest in most other things in life, and it's at the cost of your mental health or your physical health, then it becomes a problem. There's actually no definition for social media addiction yet, because it has not been included in what is called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. So it's basically just this Bible of mental health illnesses that, like, they define all these different mental health illnesses, and social media addiction has not been defined yet. But I think we all know that, you know, social media addiction, like gaming addiction, exists, right? So I would say that as long as what the definition of addiction is the same across the board, I think it becomes a problem when you are doing it at the cost of everything else. And when it starts to interfere in your day-to-day life and you can't function, then yeah, it becomes a problem. Okay, so this is the final part of our of the presentation tonight. It's basically why do they become addicted? And we kind of distilled it to 3 core reasons. And the first is that it's an escape. So what games and social media do is that it provides you this, like, day-to-day life can be quite mundane. I mean, in like lockdown situation and COVID, especially for kids, I think it's so dull for them. They don't get to go out. They don't get to, I mean, you know, life is kind of boring and pretty stifling. And on top of that, they're on online school, which is not very interesting. And then they have all this work, which is not very interesting. And it's not a nice time for anyone. But I think especially if you're a child, it's extra not nice. And actually, games provide a huge relief. And social media too is like an escape. So you can go and basically you can veg out, right? On social media, you can just scroll and like look at friends' pictures and that kind of stuff. And if you're gaming, then you can just play games and you don't think about anything else. It's pretty great. Does anyone here use social media and or gaming as an escape? No? Okay.
I can probably say yes at some point. At some point, I did use the gaming as a stress relief, as a sort of, okay, let me just forget about everything around me, and all I need to do is concentrate on this one thing. And it's sometimes it's like it's not a replacement for meditation, but it's sort of kind of like you're meditating. You sort of forget about everything, you focus only on this one thing, and you know, your brain churns at the back, right? If everything's in a subway, churns at the back. And so if I were to go back to a problem after, let's say, playing a game for half an hour, I have a different perspective on it. I can think of it in a different way, as opposed to if I just spent an hour staring at that same problem, not making any headway. And so that's sort of one use case that I used to use it for. I haven't been doing that much lately.
Thank you. So yeah, I think that's a really good, I think the way Kieran described it, though, is a very constructive way to use it. But I think what we worry about is when you're doing that because you can't face anything else. So, of course, if you struggle with schoolwork and you can't complete the schoolwork, and instead of asking for help and like pushing through it, you'd rather game, then of course you're just going to continue gaming, because if you stop, you still have to do fractions. And who wants to do fractions when you can game, man? Like it's not very interesting, right, to do schoolwork. So it's an escape. So that's the first reason. The second is that it provides a very nice sense of belonging. Like Nikki has already mentioned, right, that her son feels like he has this community of friends And actually, especially if you struggle socially, with like social interactions, face-to-face social interactions, being on social media and games will give you this like community, because like for social media you can belong to a certain group. For example, like Discord. I don't know how many of you here know or use Discord, but a lot of my teenage students use Discord to talk to like-minded people. So Discord will have different rooms. Like for example, one of my students has a singing room or singing group that she goes to, and she sings on Discord, and then people give her feedback and stuff like that. And she's actually very shy, but she's a very good singer, and she wouldn't really sing in real life, but obviously online it gives her this kind of sense of belonging, because she's now this part of this group of singers. And then we have kids who play Minecraft, and then this whole community of Minecraft, this whole community of people who play Among Us, like all these different games, right? And they really feel like they belong to a tribe, and they have people with common interests. So I think games and social media actually do quite a good job at giving people that sense of belonging. Does anyone here have anything like personal experiences to add to this?
I think I mentioned earlier that like same reason why I used to play games was with my friends, right? It was literally just to hang out after playing football. So, and it started, I think, a lot more innocently, where we play for an hour or two and then it's fine, but then it slowly escalates. I think that's the main problem. I know that there were points where I was definitely gaming in an unhealthy way, not all the way Kieran was describing, where I would lose sleep, I'd lose all that stuff, and it'd be like, we'd be up till 6 a.m. because we'd play next game, and then, at 6 a.m. and then we all go to sleep for 2 hours and go to class. Like, none of that was healthy, but it was just what we did because it was your friends, and your friends will be like, if there's 5 of you playing together, and one person says, let's play again, it's sort of very easy for the other person to be like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, it kind of creates this FOMO as well, right? Like, this fear of missing out. Like, if I'm not there and everyone else is playing without me or chatting without me, or whatever it is, like sometimes they have these like online groups or whatever, and they chat right through Facebook or Instagram, and you're not there, like you miss out. And maybe you don't even get invited for a party because you're not there. So it really does give you a sense of belonging. And the last reason is that it gives you a sense of achievement and purpose and challenge. And I think we all need this. Like, we all need a sense of purpose. We all need to feel like we are going somewhere in our lives, I think. And for a lot of our kids, especially I think in lockdown, it feels like there's no purpose to their lives. Like, it's so mundane. Every day it's the same. They have nothing to look forward to. Schoolwork is just so purposeless. Like, sometimes it's so hard, and then they don't understand what it's for, because obviously that's something that I think schools, at least in Malaysia, are not very good at explaining to the kids, like why you have to learn this. It's almost like this is just what you have to learn, and this is the way it is. Learn it or else you fail. And the kid is like, well, I don't really care if I fail because I don't see any purpose in this. Why should I struggle? And games do give you this sense of like you're achieving something, there's a purpose, like I want to level up because I want to get to the end, right? And then like they have these like bragging rights with their friends that they're very good at it. What level are you at? And they talk about that with girls very often in social media. It's how many likes do you have, how many followers do you have, and that is the sense of challenge and purpose, and gives you the sense of self-worth. So basically we covered 3 reasons, like it's an escape, a sense of belonging, and gives you a sense of achievement. And
sorry to interrupt, Tracy.
yes, Joe.
No one looks like they have a hand up. It's G.
Oh.
Yeah, we're just gonna wait for when Tracy finished her topic. That's what I usually will do. But yeah, carry on.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, like, I'm just wrapping up. Really, that's all. I mean, that's all I have to say. So, G, I guess that's
Nikki.
that's you, Nikki.
Sorry, this is my first time on Please proceed.
Okay, you can press 6 to put your hand down. But yeah, usually for everyone's sake, I will wait till like whoever's finished with their topic, and then whenever there's a lull, then I will call the person that raised their hand.
Sure.
Also, I don't see the hands raised. Am I blind?
It's because you can see your presenter screen, so you're too many things.
Okay.
If you look at the list of people in the chat, the hand up symbol was next to G's name. So if you look under the list of people.
It's okay, Joe. I'm a boomer. That's how my friends describe me. So you guys can navigate this part.
All right, carry on, Tracy.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
That's all you have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generation from a boomer.
Yeah.
I know, right? I'm like, what are we talking about this?
Well, I think that's great. So yeah, I think this was I know we had a bit more of a free flow where we were talking back and forth during the whole presentation, but I think now it's sort of a time for people to ask their questions, maybe bring up topics, and really just first I want to thank Tracy for like putting this together. It's really informative and very interesting stuff. And maybe before we move on, we sort of talked a lot about the struggles and the issues that are kind of prevalent with this sort of like generation of social media and gaming. But we didn't talk so much about what we can do. So maybe that's like the first question to you, Tracy, is what kind of ideas do you have for parents? Like there are a few around that are looking to see how they can maybe introduce their children to social media or at least start that conversation.
Okay. So I guess the first thing is that I always want people to think about like how they were parented versus their parenting styles. Because sometimes we tend to, just like how, we tend to teach the way we were taught. Sometimes we also tend to parent the way we were parented. And I often get people to think about like, what was it about what your parents did that are similar or different to the way you parent your own child. And then to also just think about like what really works and what doesn't, because it's kind of easy to just kind of like regardless of whether our parents did everything right or everything wrong or some right, some wrong, sometimes we just replicate their parenting style. And it's just good to think about that so that we can be more conscious about how we approach these kinds of things with our kids. Because I don't know about your personal experiences, but the students that I get, their parents can be very negative. So it really doesn't help when they are like very kind of like, you're always gaming, you never do anything constructive, you never help out in the house, blah blah blah. And that actually, when there's all this negativity, it actually fuels them to turn more to gaming and social media, because they need to escape, right? They need to have a sense of belonging because they don't feel like they belong in the family. So that's what we don't want. So we need to try and stay away from the negativity. But as a principal, also, one of the psychologists who works quite a lot with people who have addiction issues is to balance high dopamine activities with low dopamine activities. So high dopamine activities are those things that give you instant gratification. So things like taking cocaine, drinking alcohol, gaming, social media, all these are high dopamine activities. Low dopamine activities are those that require a bit more delayed gratification. So if you think about it, things like cooking is low dopamine, baking. So let's think about low dopamine activities that are enjoyable. Can you guys think of other low dopamine activities?
Hiking.
Yeah, hiking, exactly.
Meditation.
Yes, yeah.
Reading.
Yeah.
I don't know, some books I read are very high dopamine. Like, I ain't gonna lie.
That's the kind of books you want to know.
Yeah, so you guys named quite a lot already, but basically things like exercise and all of that, they're all considered low dopamine activities because sometimes I don't know. For me, exercise is actually a high dopamine activity because I get instant gratification from it. But for a lot of other people, exercise is a low dopamine activity because you have to work through and push through the pain before you can get whatever reward it is, right? Whether the reward is just the sense of, I feel good because I've worked out, or it's the sense of, I look good. I think some people here, that I work out with can identify with that they look a lot better after workout, and that's kind of the sense of achievement that they get. So what this psychologist, his name is Dr. Sussman, Sussman, for those of you who are interested in looking at his work. He recommends that for kids that are 10 and below, to balance out 30 minutes low dopamine activity with 30 minutes high dopamine activity. And for older kids, 10 and above, he recommends 1 hour of high dopamine alternating with 1 hour low dopamine. So this is basically the goal. Like, if your child is addicted to screens or social media, like, you're not going to be able to achieve that immediately. But it's something that you want to keep in mind because that's the goal and that's what you want to work towards. So like those are things that we can do, but I think how you approach it would be really important, because what you don't want to do is to force it down your kid's throat and say, like, you're gaming all the time, let's go for a walk. Because they're not going to want to go for a walk. They're just going to be like, no, I don't want to do it, it's so boring, blah, 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 blah. So that thing of like the approach to it, I think, has to be done very consciously. And if you guys are interested, we can talk about it more, but I don't want to keep going. So yeah, I'm just going to stop here and then you can ask your next question.
No, but actually that's interesting, because to me that was, I didn't think about it a lot when I was younger, but the way I managed to sort of study or get myself to study was always in short bursts. So I'd take like 15 minutes where I'd study, and then 15 minutes I'd go watch a show. And I kept doing that, and what would happen is after the entire day, even though I only ever decided to allocate 15 minutes to studying each time, I would work maybe 4 or 5 hours in the entire day, by just doing it that way. And it was that weird balance of, low dopamine studying, high dopamine watch show. Low dopamine studying, high dopamine watch show. And it was quite a fun way to work, not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's good, Avi.
I don't know if you're familiar with the public Dharma technique.
I think I know it, but why don't you tell us about it?
So it's kind of like what Avi says he did, except you work for study whatever for 25 minutes, and then you take a break for 5 minutes, and then you go back, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, I mean that's in an ideal world, I suppose, where you work for 25 minutes and you take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, that world didn't work for Avi. And if I'm being honest, the start, it was more like 15 minutes study, 25 to 30 minutes break.
Does that start work for Avi now?
It's some things have changed. Well, no, it's really, really interesting stuff, and really, I think if anyone else has any questions on that matter, just feel free to put your hand up. Otherwise, I think there's something that this is something Tracy probably mentioned it a long while back, and I think it's something that stuck with me. And it's also a quote that she originally had wanted to put in the slides, but I thought it maybe be something that maybe took up too much time. But I think it's a beautiful one, and I think it's very relevant in this day and age. We're talking actually about this is a quote by. It's essentially came by. Okay, I have to bring this up because I cannot remember it off the top of my head, the whole summary, and it's a beautiful summary on basically Huxley versus Orwell, who are two very famous writers. I think people know more of 1984, which was a very popular book, but there was another book called A Brave New World, and it kind of follows this quote. In his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business, Neil Postman, who was the guy that actually we're quoting, highlights the dystopian future envisioned by George Orwell and Aldous Huxley in their works 1984 and The Brave New World, respectively. Orwell actually warns of a future controlled by the government, surveillance, censorship, and oppression. That's the little, controls from above, as you can see the minion there. And that future was always something that was very very much feared and talked about, but it was a less popular or more I think more silently talked about future, which was what Huxley predicted was actually there would be a future in which we would actually be controlled by our own passivity and hedonistic pleasure versus some overarching body, which arguably is even scarier and probably more like what we're living today. I think nicely shown by this little gif of us just basically melting our brains on our phone. And this happens, I think it's a very relevant thing. And when you talk about this, of course, a lot of us grew up without social media, games being very prevalent in our lives. And I think I already feel the impacts for myself. I cannot imagine a world where you grew up essentially with a device that could numb your brain, constantly running in your palm of your hand. So I think that's a very scary world to imagine. I think it's just a really nice place to sort of quote that as the end of the official discussion, unless anyone else has a last question before we wrap up.
Now, I was just going to come in actually and say that even before the advent of gaming and all of these things which have happened in the last decade or so, I think when we were parenting, I mean, in the 90s, computers were were a big thing, right? Kids had to have computers. So there's I think every generation has these kinds of influences which really get people very addicted to certain things, right? So the question is, how do you deal with it? I mean, it was much easier, obviously, in the 90s to deal with it because you could shut a computer down. But of course, now you can't. But I think from in my experience anyway is that it was quite important somehow to be able to work. Or to understand the media yourself as a parent, so that you could become involved in some way. Because you cannot just divorce yourself from it. And so I think that's probably something parents have to do, so that they can engage in these activities with their children, and hopefully then be able to balance this gratification with something less more what we call social, if you like. It's a difficult balance, but I think somehow I need to think about it and see how it can be done with this. I'm sure it's much tougher now than it was when I was a parent. So it's something which needs to be considered very carefully. And I don't know whether in terms of Tracy as a teacher, and of course you're dealing with special needs kids. These must become even more starkly important. I'm not sure whether you've had to deal with this specifically.
I think that when you work with children who struggle, whether it's academically or socially, they are just more prone to turning to these things, mostly because they struggle, right? And if you struggle, you're going to find the sense of escape, the sense of belonging, and sense of achievement from these kinds of avenues. So I think regardless of whether your child has special learning needs or whether they're neurotypical, I think what we have to do is try and give them a sense of purpose, right? Because if they have a sense of purpose, then actually they're not going to want to turn to the online world as much. Yes, they will still be interested in it, but they're not going to seek out the online world in that way. So I think it's really important that we are mindful of why they're turning to those things, and then start to build it into their day-to-day activities, right? To give them a sense of belonging, to give them a sense of achievement, and to help them out so that they don't feel like life is so overwhelming that they need to escape into this online world.
Were you guys going to add something, or that was it? All right, cool. Well, I think that comes to the end of the official time. So I really think that was a good place to end as well. really insightful stuff, and definitely with the different generations of parents, it's definitely different struggles. And I think for myself as well, looking forward in the future, having wanting to have kids and stuff, it's also a scary world that's coming before us. So it's really insightful to hear all of this stuff, and maybe with this is the start of the conversation that maybe can grow into more and more ideas and more ways of how we can solve this, because I think we raised there's a lot of parts where even on the developer side, we don't understand the algorithms and we are using them in games and all these places. This might also be, as Kieran said, taking the guilt away and not putting the blame on developers, because that's not the intention, but it's very much what is happening. Maybe removing that layer of that black box, trying to decipher it a bit more, trying to, see how we can make healthy applications in the long run is probably something more people need to be aware of, and this could be a good starting point for that. I think on that note, I just thank everybody, and especially Tracy for her time in presenting all of this, and sort of close the session. But everyone's welcome to stay, chat, and catch up a little bit. And I think Tracy had more ideas and things she wanted to talk about, but it's just really in the limited time we have, we sort of cut it back to that. So I'd love to leave everyone and just chat a little bit more. And if you want to approach Tracy, she said she'll be here for a while as well. So you want to just talk to her, by all means, just walk up to her. I think I'll put the rules of that as well up on the screen in a second. But basically with this, you can walk around and you can talk with anybody, have a little mini chat, and then carry on your sort of merry way after. So thanks everyone for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.